can carry the agenda. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Confirmation of the minute of 26 February 26, that the Ottawa Police Service Board confirmed the minute of 26 February 2018 meeting. On the minute? Okay. Declaration of interest? Inquiries? None at this point. Thank you. Item number 1 is the Chief Verbal Report, so we can hold item number 1. Item number 2 is the election-related resources policy. Basically, is the City of Ottawa election policy, and we're adopting that policy because that comply with all boards within the municipality. On that item, carry. Thank you. Item number 3 is contract award, South Campus Phase 1, Prime Consultant Service. So this is that the Ottawa Police Service Board approved the contract award to Moriyama and Tashima and CSAP Architect for Prime Consultant Services for the architectural design and engineering of the South Campus Phase 1 facility to be located at 55 Lodge Road for the amount not to exceed $3,855,500, including taxes. So this is with our budget, and this is a primary, I believe, design contract, right, Deborah? So on this item, so because this is a large amount, so they need the board approval and the money within our budget. On the item? Carry. Thank you. Item number 4, Igniting the Spirit, is fundraising event for the Wabano Center for the Aboriginal Health, that the Ottawa Police Service Board approved funding for a table at the Wabano Center for Aboriginal Health, Igniting the Spirit Gala being held on 21st June 2018 at the Ottawa Conference Center at the cost of $2,500. On the item? Okay, thank you. Item number 5 is the Financial Status Report 2017 Annual Report.
Can we hold that, Mr. Chair, for questions?
Okay, so okay, thank you. Item number 6 is a sworn promotion process 2017 Annual Report. I'm going to hold this item. I think we have a question for clarity, so we'll hold item number 6. Item number 7, outstanding board inquiries in motion, March 2018. The report that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. On the item, C. Item number 8 is letters of commendation, the Chief's report. So that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. The item received. Thank you. Before I turn it over to the Chief for the verbal report, so just to quickly to report, the HR committee met in camera last Thursday on confidential personal matters. We just met and obviously to discuss a process for staffing. So there's nothing to report publicly at this point. It was in camera meeting. So just to let my colleague know. And with that, I'll turn it over to the Chief for the Chief's verbal report. Chief.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, board members. This weekend, we saw a serious shooting in the downtown area that left a 35-year-old man fighting for his life. He does remain in hospital in stable condition, and our investigation is actively continuing. Since the start of the year, we have put major focus on gun violence in our community. Our frontline and investigative units are very much engaged. We've seized 13 guns to date and continue to make arrests and lay charges in relation to this type of violence. Our officers have conducted over 209 compliance checks and 387 police visits to problem addresses since starting this initiative in January. It's clear that we need to continue this important work. We also will be participating in a province-wide gun amnesty set to run throughout April. The amnesty was announced by the Ontario Provincial Police, and we will be collecting any guns from our residents here in Ottawa. The program will begin on April 1st. For those who are interested in bringing in guns, whatever you do, please do not bring any guns into police stations. Instead, please call us at our telephone number to arrange to have an officer come and pick them up. We know that stolen, legally owned guns make up a good percentage of the crime guns in our city. This amnesty will provide residents with a safe way to surrender weapons, imitation weapons, and related equipment and ammunition which they are not legally entitled to own or no longer want, to enhance public and police officer safety. We also recognize, Mr. Chair, that criminals using illegal firearms aren't the ones that are going to be calling us. What we are attempting to do is to reduce the likelihood of firearms located in residents which are no longer needed and reduce the risk of them being stolen. Mr. Chair, I was also pleased to participate a couple of weeks at a national symposium organized by Public Safety Canada, which spoke of the issue of gun violence in our communities. And it's clear that this issue is facing small, medium, and large municipalities across Canada. And there's a collective effort amongst all police services, community agencies, to get a handle on this and to hold those accountable and to ensure that we're putting the measures in place to prevent individuals from becoming involved in this type of criminal activity. Last Wednesday, we had the opportunity to meet with the community at the Anti-Black Racism Town Hall. Included at the update meeting were representatives from the City of Ottawa, 2 different school boards, and community health and resource centers. It was an opportunity for us to talk about some key items that we have been working on in partnership with Ottawa's diverse communities. We updated the attendees on the development of a new Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Office, the start of a comprehensive diversity audit, a review of our anti-racial profiling policy, the fact that we completed the fair and impartial police training, the fact that our outreach recruitment strategy will get more resources and improve our processes. We will introduce a new bias awareness training for our members, that we will continue with our race data collection project with respect to traffic stops, and that an additional analysis will be done later this year, that we will continue to examine our new deployment model to address concerns about racial profiling and over-policing, and introduce a new council to replace the compact committee model, which was disbanded this recent December. It's important that we continue to work together on this to create lasting solutions that will impact the wellness of all our communities. I also want to provide the board with a short update on the conducted energy weapons consultation that has been underway since the beginning of March. An online questionnaire has been posted on our website, and we've been reaching out regarding the opportunity to comment through media, social media, and community channels. The questionnaire will be online until after the Easter weekend. A series of targeted consultations have also been scheduled with community groups, mental health advocates, and practitioners, and other interested parties. We will use this feedback and perspectives gathered as we develop a report to the board on the expansion of CEW deployment for our May meeting. Earlier this month, our K-9 team responded to a request for assistance from the Ontario Provincial Police. The OPP were attempting to locate a vehicle that had been involved in a robbery in Rockland. The area to search was quite large, so our K-9 officers were called in. Constable Martin Corbet located hockey bags at the end of a remote country road containing the stolen goods, and K-9 Constable Jamie Desormeaux and Eden Beatty, with the help of K-9 partner Frigo, later located the suspect and arrested him. 2 firearms were also recovered as part of this investigation. As the board is aware, the diversity audit requirements that I mentioned earlier on were provided to the board last year and were based on the recommendations from the Traffic Stop Race Data Collection Project and significant community and police input. Over the last several weeks, we provided this update to internal and external stakeholders in order to encourage both awareness and sharing of the requested proposal, which closes tomorrow on March 27th. We expect to make an announcement regarding the successful proponent in early April as soon as the selection process is complete. And I'm pleased to report that we have had significant interest in proponents to do this work. Our robbery unit successfully concluded its investigation of a bingo hall robbery in early March and arrested 5 people. Upon executing a search warrant in relation to the investigation, our officer seized a large quantity of drugs. One suspect was charged in relation to the robbery, and all suspects have been charged with drug-related offenses. In addition, the unit also successfully cleared an unrelated series of investigations, including a bank robbery and 3 retail robberies, all linked to the same suspect. A series of charges have been laid. And I'd like to end by highlighting an example of the difficult work our communication center operators do each and every day to serve the residents of this great city. One such call involved a recent murder-suicide, with a child calling 911 to report the incident involving 2 parents. Amanda McConnell took this call and remained on the line to ensure the safety of those in the house, including an autistic male who was overwhelmed by the events. Her compassion and care ensured that those dealing with such a terrible event felt cared for and safer until help arrived. And Mr. Chair, I want to follow up. Last board meeting, I updated you that we had promoted 6 inspectors. Today, I had along with executive, had the honor and privilege to promote 1 superintendent, 10 staff sergeants, and 20 sergeants, where we provided them with their new badges and talked to them about the significance and the importance of their leadership role in assuming supervisory positions within the police service. And one of those superintendents is here with us, Superintendent Sterling Hartley. So Sterling, congratulations. Mr. Chair, that's my verbal report, subject to any questions.
So before we turn it to my colleague, just to add our own congratulations on behalf of the board to Superintendent Harley and to all the sergeant and staff sergeant and all the folks been promoted to our organization. So any question to the chief, member Faustin, to my comment? Okay.
I listened with great interest to your interview on the radio when you were talking about when you had attended that outreach event last week. And I'm wondering, when is the outreach recruitment strategy going to get officially launched? I was here about 6 months ago and I watched a fantastic video that was supposed to be part of this launch, and there were many other things listed that were going to be part of it, and I'm still waiting with great anticipation for them to happen. I'm just wondering if we have a date yet of when they're going to happen.
Director General.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad you asked the question, actually, because we've finalized the communication strategy in conjunction with our internal resources, and I expect with the Chief's approval that you'll see that start to launch. One of the first steps we'll be changing the banner on the outside of 474 Elgin to bring our new recruitment banner there, and we've got some media that would roll out with community partners such as Tim Hortons, Ottawa Sports and Entertainment Group, and Cineplex Odeon. So we'll be glad to bring back a report. We can update you on the communication strategy and some of the resource requests that we're taking forward as part of the outreach recruitment. You'll see that we talked about when we did the update that we'll be reinstating our outreach team, so probably 4 to 5 sworn folks plus a civilian member going out into the community to help market policing as a career and also find candidates. And then we've asked for some additional resources to help supplement the background investigation team with about 1,500 candidates to put through. We've got additional demands for the background team. So we'll be happy to bring that forward, the communication part in April and the rest of it in May. And you'll see that we're adding into it additional approach to collecting the demographic information around the recruits to see who starts with us and then at what points they are successful or unsuccessful in the process by their gender background or their cultural background. That's information, in order to gather it correctly, that we need to, at the beginning of the process, ask their permission and make it clear how it would be used in the selection of candidates or just for the tracking of candidates. And we're trying as well to take advantage of other aspects of their current management information system to be able to increase the effectiveness of the process itself. There are 12 steps in the process. We're taking 1,500 candidates through 12 steps. So we're trying to sort out how we can do that through a lean with a lean process. So if it's possible to bring the candidate in only once or twice, that we as well adapt an effective process. So we've been working on it through Inspector Cartwright actually over the last several months. We'll be happy to bring you the proposal we've got and finalize and launch it.
Okay. Any follow-up question?
So the timeline will be available to us in April, you think?
I think we'll bring you the communication in April and the rest of the process in May. We've just got a little bit more work to do on the process end of it and to finalize and ensure that what we do aligns with the Human Rights Tribunal and the collection of information on people's gender and cultural background. Haven't quite closed that loop yet.
Thank you.
Any other question? Madame Velikat?
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Chef, I'm interested, I think I know the answer, but I would really like you to explain it anyway. The whole business of collecting firearms that you're going to be doing with the OPP, can you explain why you would not take anonymous calls, or just the whole idea of being able to collect as much as possible, but there are certain limitations I understand that you can't do. Can you explain to us why that is?
Certainly, we'll take any phone call that will help us remove a firearm from a residence where the owner is no longer using them. So I'm not clear on the anonymous call. John, Chris, Inspector McGettrick, Chris.
Yes, I'll try to answer that then. The idea with the amnesty is to get the disused firearms that are sitting in family homes and are open to break-ins. We don't tend, from our experience, to get a lot of actual crime guns, but we remove legitimate guns that have a good chance of becoming crime guns. There are other mechanisms that we find are more effective for actually getting crime guns, and that's from people involved in criminal activity. We get a lot of tips through Crime Stoppers, and then our investigators will follow that up, or through informants or other mechanisms, we'll target those crime guns. One of the issues with looking at anonymous is that when we don't know where the guns are coming from, and it's if somebody's turning up, there's some checks and balances we have to do and check the firearms to see where they're from. And it hasn't been a hindrance in the past, but we just got to be careful that we investigate and do a due diligence on when firearms are turned in.
Okay, any other question to the Chief's verbal report? Not so much about the Chief's verbal report, but question to the Director General. There was a delay in a workplace accident and injury annual report. So is that coming in April as well, DG?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Okay, on the Chief's verbal report, you see? Thank you very much, folks. Thank you, Chief. Item number 5, Finance Status Report 2017. We have question from Councillor Hubley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I have a few questions. On the identified pressures and solutions, you list WSIB claims and long-term disability. Do we know if this is related to changes in the job that's being done, or have we looked at the screening criteria for the new employees? Is this, we've heard several presentations about how we need to reduce or relax the screening criteria. Is that contributing to this problem here?
Mr. Chair, I'll start with that. As far as we have certainly not reduced or relaxed any screening criteria, and our processes have not changed with respect to that as concerned. Where we're seeing WSIB trending up across policing is some workplace injuries, some injuries with respect to mental health and mental well-being. There has been presumptive legislation that has been passed and approved by the province. So we're seeing increases in that area. We knew that, as a community, we were talking more about mental health, and as a profession, emergency responders, first responders are now talking more about that. We are seeing a change in the stigma that has been associated with mental health in first responders. As a result of that, we are having more people come forth and declare mental health issues and putting claims in. That is a good thing, because now we are dealing with people with mental health issues, and they are getting treatment and getting better and can come back to work. But that is seeing a trend across the province in pressures around WSIB. And if I've missed anything, no, that's it.
And that's very good, Chief, and that's why we want to have these programs to look after the officers, because we do ask the men and women of the police force to do especially hard jobs and unique work. So that's why I'm asking, do we know, like you're saying, it's mostly mental health claims? So that's what I'm wondering. Is the force or the service tracking this to see if there's any groupings or any trends going on here?
We do collect data with respect to the types of injuries. There are limitations with respect to the different classifications because of a diagnosis and our inability to gather that type of information. And I'll turn over to DG for more specific.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is a question we can help answer next month when we table the accident and injury report, because it starts to outline the factors driving WSIB claims as well. So maybe we have a more fulsome discussion when you see the data, but it will help to identify the different musculoskeletal injuries versus occupational stress injuries, and we get a better evidence-based handle on what's pushing WSIB.
Okay, thank you. So my next question is to do with the sales of the collision reports. We talked about this before as part of the budget process, that the efficiencies are nowhere near being achieved. So you're making adjustments to the budget with it. Was that developed by a consultant, or was that developed in-house, these estimates?
Mr. Chair, that was all in-house work that was done a number of years ago, back in 2007 or 2008. Yeah, when I was a deputy. That's when that work was done. And we are achieving the majority of the objectives around the collision reporting centers. Our officers used to respond to 70% of the collisions that were occurring on the road, and 30% would come to the police stations. We've actually shifted that trend where our officers now are only responding to 30%, and the 70% are coming into the centers. So the goal of reducing the calls for service that are taking place, providing efficiencies with respect to the service hours that our officers are out there doing more proactive work, that's been achieved. The financial targets around the number and the uptake of purchasing of collision reports from the insurance companies, that's where we have not seen the monies and the revenues as we projected. We've also seen the number of collisions in our city reduce, which is a great thing to happen, which has contributed to the revenue. So we've have a 3 to 4 year plan to right-size that budget with respect to the revenues. We continue to work with insurance companies to see exactly what we can do to make the purchase reports a little more attractive. But that's the history behind that item.
Okay, thank you, Chief. The next one down, though, we talk about there's been a reduction in express fees. This is to do with the background checks for the same day service, because now that's standard. That was part of the whole business case as to why we're going there. So I'm curious as to why we're $300,000 short because of that. Did we not anticipate that that fee would drop drastically?
So I'll start that one and turn it over to the DG for a response. We're going to be coming back to the board with a new fee structure and proposal with, because we've gone from an online perspective. We wanted the online platform to stabilize and to see exactly what the uptake was going to be. We've achieved our objectives with respect to the percentage of people that are actually going online, and based on that, we want to come back with a new fee structure that ensures that we are recovering our costs from front end to back end, inclusive of all the types of clearance checks that we are processing, work sector, volunteer sector, and vulnerable sector as well.
DG?
Thank you. Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair. The Chief's right in the history of our approach. We had hoped, though, to be to the board last year with the revised fee proposal. So when we struck the budget, it was our goal to present the revised fee structure for background checks in the light of the new option to work online or to offer the service online. We ran into some operational issues when we went live. We pushed all the volume to Queensview, and the fire marshal made it clear we couldn't have more than 60 people in the lobby at one time. So we introduced a very rudimentary booking system. But we spent most of our time trying to get wait times down to an acceptable level, which for us is 20 minutes in the lobby, and your transaction time is about 12 minutes at the counter, or 0 online. And that's where we invested our effort, was balancing that. We didn't feel we could bring forward a new fee proposal when we still didn't have our operations settled down. So we did recognize in our budget that we were going to lose express fees. We did. We just assumed that last year we would have the new fee proposal in front of the board. So instead, what we've done is try to stabilize operations, make sure that our service is solid before we bring you a change in a fee proposal.
Sounds good. 2 questions left, Chief. The part of your solutions piece, that table 1 in your report on page 2, it shows the savings with the fleet deferral. Now, we know you can't do fleet deferral every year, but I'm hoping that as part of that process, there might have been some sort of review of how we manage the fleet and replace the fleet, and is there, can we expect some ongoing savings from that?
Mr. Chair, what I do recall is that we participated with the city when they did their fleet management audit, and we were part of that audit and took a number of the recommendations to ensure that we were following through with them, and I'll turn over to Deborah on that one as well.
Mr. Chair, I think we can look at further fleet savings. We're getting a lot more comprehensive data out of the enterprise asset management system that's M1 at the city. The fuel consumption and our experience with the SUV is improving in terms of repair and maintenance. So those are always things we can fine tune. We kind of offset, we got to watch the price of fuel, because we got $2.4 million worth of fuel budget, $2.4 million worth of maintenance budget, basically. So it might actually be a way that we temper the risk on fuel prices. But we have an inspector in charge now of the fleet management area, and I think you'll see that that's an area we can continue to save on.
So we don't know how much, but we expect to see some savings.
Yeah, this year we've been able to we're getting a full year of fleet management under our new approaches. You're right, though, we can only do that deferral once, but I think you'll see that we'll be able to continue to add efficiencies there.
Okay. So last question, the self-insured claims is up by 3 million. Currently, there's over 90 claims outstanding. What are we doing for an analysis on these claims and try to prevent that? Because with that many claims outstanding, you could blow your budget in 1 year if it all comes due.
Mr. Chair, we work, the city manages all those outstanding claims, and we work very closely with city legal to identify any trends or patterns. What we are seeing is a shift in trend with respect to the types of claims that we are receiving. In the past, what we used to see are claims associated to injuries, associated use of force. Those are very minimal now. But what we are seeing is injuries relating to motor vehicle collisions involving a police vehicle, whether directly or indirectly. The trend in Canada is around any type of musculoskeletal injuries, whiplash, and those types of injuries. People are now suing for those, and legal counsel Jeremy Wright has I think briefed the board previously on the trend that we're seeing from that perspective. So from a collision avoidance strategy, we continue to identify individuals that if they have one collision and it's at fault, they will be spoken with the supervisors. And then if they have two or more, then we have a driver training expert that sits down with them and goes through them with respect to any potential more driver training they will require. So we monitor those to try to reduce the number of collisions that our officers may be involved with.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm done.
Thank you, Member Hubley. Madam Blobstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering why the indemnification was so much above the allotted budget or the anticipated budget, or did we not have, is this something that was a surprise, or is this something we can plan for better in the future because it is part of the normal process?
Maybe I should take this one out. That's an arbitration award. It's arbitration awarded us to give that one. But did we budget for? I mean, we budget for, but we didn't budget enough, obviously.
So was it because we didn't anticipate a certain case that was going forward, or was it?
You want to go?
Yeah, I think what you actually see is a number of years. This was, I mean, the issue of legal identification of officers was an issue in dispute between the board and the association for some time, and I think what you actually saw was a number of years compressed with the resolution of that and the single payment being made at one time.
Member Hubley, can you turn your mic off, please? Okay. This question to the Director General, because I think it'll be helpful if you can explain the non-departmental taxation account, which beyond the control of us is the $3.5 million, and that's in the taxation portion. Maybe you can explain it in a Canadian Tire language, if you don't mind.
Mr. Chair, the police service has its own tax rate. Ottawa is very progressive in that way. By having our own police tax rate, we're able to see all the costs to operate the police service, including costs transferred from the city. So it is a very reflective statistic to say what the cost of policing is for Ottawa. In other cities, they often put debt costs somewhere else, or they put fleet costs or facility costs somewhere else. So it's hard to say what the actual cost of policing is. So many years ago, Ottawa, as its a governance for taxation, created the police tax rate. The police tax rate then stands alone. It has assessment-based estimates that the city develops, and as well as something called supplementary taxes or payments in lieu of taxes, and that those revenues are taken in to offset the cost of the police service, and they create the tax rate that's levied on the assessment base. The police service folks don't do the assessment-based calculations or the supplementary tax calculations. Those are done by the tax experts, the revenue experts at the city, and given to us. And then what happens at the end of the year is if there are excesses or deficits in those taxation revenues, that can have an impact at the end of the day on the tax rate. And that's what we've shown here, is that we work with the city to finalize the status of those taxation accounts. What we found is that they were below estimate by $3.5 million. So the taxation revenue was lower than expected by city staff by $3.5 million. Usually the city experienced the same kind of trends, but not to the same extent. So when we put together the police operational deficit of $3 million and the taxation deficit of 3.5 million overall, the tax rate is at 6.8 million. The cities are responsible to determining what to do with that deficit. If they're in a surplus position, generally they cover it off, which is what happens this year. If the city's in a deficit position, then we have to look at another way to resolve the deficit, because it can be carried forward into the next taxation year, but that's direction we would receive from city staff.
And the 3.5, what you want to call the deficit in taxation, there's no way to find that out ahead of time, because city do the general estimating and they tell us that's what you're going to receive, but they were short in some of the area in revenue, because if we are short 3.5, I would imagine the city was short 4 or 5 times that, if it's not more than that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I think what we could do, Mr. Chair, to be more helpful next year is perhaps we can, starting with the third quarter report, get an estimate from city staff about where they see those taxation accounts coming in, because by then they generally have their supplementary tax reports and the tax rolls are closed off. So probably starting in Q3, we could see if they could give us an estimate of the position of those accounts.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, point of order on that. We don't have the supplementaries at the third quarter. We get the supplementaries at the fourth quarter.
Yeah. So basically, our deficit is 3.4 on the operation side, but 3.5 is the tax deficit in this report.
Correct.
Okay. Any and I know this is not gonna, but this is a great, at least the good news is we were estimating the overtime and we came below that, which is a good news on the management side to manage the overtime properly in that area, so.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we have implemented a number of systems in place. We introduced some tools to be able to give our supervisors and managers more real-time access to where the overtime numbers are. Before, it was a very manual and labor-intensive process. All that has been automated now, so we are being able to give our managers the real-time information as to where overtime is. So that has certainly helped in the last quarter, and our supervisors have done a great job managing the overtime. The board, as the board recalls, the board did approve a recommendation that we increase our overtime budget for 2018 to make it more realistic because of the trends we've seen in the past couple of years. We did increase our WSIB budget as well, and also our legal budgets as well because of the indemnification and other legal costs. So we obviously strive to achieve a balanced budget at the end of the year, and we will continue to put our efforts towards balancing our budget for the year end.
Any other question on the Chief's verbal report? So, sorry, on this item number 5. So item number 5 is that the Aro Police Service Board received this report for information. Received, thank you. And thank you to all my colleagues on their question and answer on this one. Item number 6, Chief, the sworn promotion process, and I know there was some changes introduced from the gender audit report. Can you just tell us how this process is working in that area, in the promotion process? Like, has it changed anything? Has any change been introduced in this process? Just tell us a little bit about the process, because I'm not sure if Deborah going to answer this. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the fall, the process that we ran, the inspector process, we started to pick up on the recommendations that we brought forward from and presented to the Human Rights Commission. So if you remember, we were clear that we would train people, so the panel participants who do the interviewing or who do the scoring of the resumes, that those folks would receive GBA plus training and a bias neutral interviewing training, so that we would help people to start to become aware of how bias can be introduced, and to try and reduce the systemic barrier around the bias that can occur in interviewing. We also look to change the composition of the interview panels so that it would include both men and women, and do that consistently, and that we would have an independent facilitator in the sessions to be monitoring the questions and the answers, to ensure that we didn't accidentally wander into an area that was creating bias. So the results of the process proceeded that way. The results came forward. We haven't yet introduced a placement using gender, which we've done in some of the other processes. For example, in our development rotation process, gender is included if people want it to be. If you self-disclose your gender, we use that in placement. That hasn't been a step that we've taken in the inspector promotion processes.
Have you take those steps in other promotion, like in a sergeant and a staff sergeant?
So far, the inspector process was the first one to commence after we adopted the new approach.
Okay, Member Velikat, I know you have a question about this.
Yes, thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
go
Chair.
ahead.
So are you saying then that if someone is applying for a position internally, they're asked to self-identify or not?
In the most recent process, in the developmental rotation process, we outlined to the members that you could self-identify by gender if you wanted to. So it was your choice, and that once you had passed the process and qualified, so we had an equally qualified pool, that we would use, if you self-identified, we would use that for placement. So everyone is qualified, no change in qualifications. But the goal is to ensure that across the police service, we have gender representation. So where the developmental opportunity was, we would check to see if that section, how well they were doing on gender representation. And if they were above our 23% average, not likely to place the woman there. If it's tactical, where there's 0, then that would be a place that if someone had self-identified as female and they've expressed interest in tactical, that we would use that as a way for placement. It's a way to ensure that we gain representation across the police service, but you choose when you declare your gender whether you want to participate that way or not. And some people did, and some people didn't.
Okay, I find that very interesting because I'm not sure if I was to apply for a position that I would necessarily self-identify, because I would want to get the job based on merit first. So I'm wondering how well this is received within the membership, if you're getting any positive or negative feedback on it. How do male applicants feel about it? Do they feel that it's unfair towards them? Do they get to self-identify? I'm wondering if this practice is being used anywhere else in the country, and if you're able to provide us with some information how well you feel the membership is responding to this new method, because I do think that it's being done for the very right reasons, but I'm not sure to what degree it's being well received. And I think it's something we need to talk about.
Excellent question, and there is a mixed bag. It's certainly a bold step that we have taken as a police service, and we are leaders in that area to ensure that as a result of the gender audit, to ensure that women had equal access to opportunities in our transfer process and promotion policy process. And in our goal to ensure that we do have representation across the entire police service, introducing this element and change into our transfer policy, which applies to development policy, rotations, our fixed terms and anchor positions, has certainly created a lot of discussion within the police service. It's a discussion it's a healthy discussion, because it's a discussion that needs to be had. And we wanted to make sure that it was discussion based on facts. So we've been out there communicating as best as we can, and our senior leadership team as well, communicating the reasons why we've made these changes. And you're quite right that that there's been a mixed reaction with males, women, and within women as well. Some, as you rightfully explained, some want to ensure that they are chosen on merit alone. What we have said is that once you qualify for a position, you are qualified, as qualified as anybody else in that pool. However, our audit revealed that the policies that we have had and the practices we've had for years that have been entrenched in policing have not allowed women to succeed as well as quickly as their male counterparts. So we did have to make a fundamental change in our policy to equal the playing field and to make it equitable for everybody. So it has, we have some happy people, some unhappy people, but as your last statement, we have done these changes for the right reasons. And as an organization, this is a big change, and we're working through it. There's nobody that would dispute the fact that this will make us a better organization. So that is not in dispute. But certainly from a culture perspective, we're working through it.
Madam Pelican, just 1 second. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, continue.
Okay, it's just on the same. I think, from my perspective, my opinion, education is the number one thing, the number one factor. And not just for women, it's for all the members, that they understand why you're doing what you're doing, and that it doesn't segregate our membership. It doesn't, make us versus them kind of thing. So I look forward to hearing more about this and how you move forward with it and how things will progress in a positive manner. Thank you.
But some of those recommendations was in the audit, gender audit recommendation. So this is nothing new to us, right? Like you remember. But I'm gonna turn it to the Director General to answer this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a very lively discussion on this morning. Actually, we have a Women's Information Network breakfast, and I'm going to single out Inspector Kevin Maloney, who actually brought this issue for. We have men attend to. It's not just the women, and he brought that question forward because the speaker was one of the retired acting commission ACOMs from British Columbia. And they've introduced this in the RCMP, so Kevin actually asked her about that, and she strongly supported it, said that probably a different kind of version of the same approach that we have. And I think it will be, we've got both men and women talking about it, which is the way to start this conversation. Deputy Bell has been down spreading information, talking to his folks about it, because it's a way forward, and we're definitely pushing new ground forward. That's always an exciting time, but we've got both men and women leading and talking, and I think that's one of the things we'd hoped for.
Are you done, Madam Bellicat? Yeah, merci. No, I just want to make sure, merci. Member Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, and this may be a very touchy subject, but can we not use the same process to ensure that we don't just have a fair spread of women across the service, but that we have people of different skin tones and different cultures and different backgrounds equally spread across the service if they choose to self-identify?
We are, that's one of the things that we are hoping the diversity audit that we are undertaking will help us identify. We've made the change in policy based on evidence, and we want to make sure that we have the evidence to support the changes in policies that are required. So that is certainly an element that we are going to be looking at through the lens of the diversity audit, which we are undertaking.
Any other question on this item? So item 6, that the report recommendation that the RO Police Service Board received this report for information. On the item received? Received, thank you very much. And that will conclude our meeting in this open session. I need a motion to move in camera. So moved by Member Smallwood. Thank you very much, folks. Have a great evening.